any of them, but our membership meetings include annual election, special election, and budget ratification. Recent changes to NRS 116 require that the annual and the election meeting be conducted together. We also have executive board meetings. Keep in mind when we say the word executive board, NRS 116 refers to a board as an executive board. That doesn't necessarily mean they're meeting in executive session. So we have board of directors regular meeting, board of directors executive meeting, and emergency meetings. Your annual election meetings are mandated by law to be held at least once a year in the same month the transition occurred from the developer or in any other regular annual established occurrence. The board can remind the community of the past year's accomplishments and plan for upcoming year. The annual and election meetings require a 15-day notice unless your governing documents require otherwise. It's very important you check your requirements so that you're not out of compliance. And at this meeting, homeowners are elected either by ballot or by acclamation, and they do require 30-day notice to be mailed per NRS 116-31034. Budget ratification. This meeting is held annually, and once the board is adopted, then a budget ratification meeting is scheduled. This is where members have the opportunity to attend and vote on the budget that has been adopted by the board. Unless at that meeting a majority of the unit's owners are in attendance and vote specified in the declaration is rejected, then the proposed budget is automatically deemed ratified. Keep in mind, the budget ratification meeting requires attendance in person. You cannot vote by ballot or by proxy if you want to reject a budget. It must be done in person. Your board of directors regular session meetings. These are regularly scheduled meetings. They must be held at least once every 100 days and or unless specified otherwise by your governing documents. They require a 10-day notice and they must be audio recorded. Homeowners are welcome to attend, and this is where the board gets the opportunity to conduct business. Board meetings are where you get transparency, and I'm sure recently you've had an opportunity to attend via Zoom or an electronic, and we're finding that maybe this might be a method in the future. Your executive session. This is the board of directors at its closed meeting where they discuss violations, delinquencies, hearings, legal matters, and they are closed to members unless, of course, you are sent an invitation. You cannot meet in executive session to discuss anything other than these items. You cannot meet in executive session to renew, modify, or take any other action regarding a contract. And once again, these meetings are closed to homeowners. You are only allowed to attend if you are invited by the board of directors. Emergency meetings. As defined in NRS 116-31083, subparagraph 12, an emergency means an occurrence that could not be reasonably foreseen, such as a pandemic, affects the health, safety, welfare of the unit's owners or the residents in the community, requires immediate attention and possible action by the board of directors, and makes it impracticable to comply with subsection 2, 3, or 6 of NRS 116, and those are the sections regarding notice and agenda requirements. Please keep in mind that inconvenience does not equal an emergency. This section of the law and emergency meetings is one that's frequently abused, and it's very important that you document the cause or the need for an emergency meeting and that they are not conducted on a regular basis. Okay, so we discussed meetings. Now we're going to talk about recording the actual events that happen at your board of directors and your executive session meetings. The minutes of the meeting are official record of the actions of the board. It's important that you review them for accuracy. The minutes are a summary of the meeting and not a transcript of the recording. If the board takes action outside of a meeting due to emergency situation that we discussed before, it's important that the action is placed on the agenda for the next regularly scheduled meeting, and that action is either ratified or memorialized in the minutes. Any opposing votes should be recorded in the minutes, and the homeowners have an opportunity to read a statement to the board and ask that it be filed with the minutes. It's also important that you check your bylaws to make sure that you're recording everything that's required per your governing documents and what the actual specifics are regarding your actions outside of a meeting. As Cindy alluded to in her section, that request for proposals is one of the best tools for board of directors. This is how your day-to-day work is completed. It's an opportunity to specify the actual work that you would like to get done and provide a very detailed scope of work. We have an extensive list of trade partners and vendors that we utilize and recommend here at Camco. So if you need a list of vendors, please reach out to your community manager and we'd be happy to provide you with a list. But you want to make sure that you take the time to complete a very detailed scope of work and that the RFP is sent to several prospective vendors or trade partners with due dates and very detailed specifics. When reasonably possible, it is required that you obtain 3 bids, reasonable, possible, or practicable. It's my recommendation, if you want 3 bids, ask for 6. And there are many times when 3 bids are not possible to be received. There are specialty items where there are only certain vendors that provide those services. So you may not be able to get 3 bids, but you have to at least show that you've made an effort and try. Proposals are returned in a sealed bid and opened at a board meeting on the recording. It's very important, no peeking. If you get to a board meeting and you make a decision right when you open the proposals, then it's going to be very evident to the people that you've probably looked ahead of time. So it's very important that you follow these regulations and don't peek. Who you should hire. As Cindy alluded in her section also, it's very important that you do your background work on the vendors that you utilize. They are a reflection of your community, and it's important that you're using licensed and insured professionals. That's part of our job. Camco has a vetting process that we go through for our vendors that are on our vendors list, but it's also important that board members realize the amount of work that goes into vetting those trade partners. Not only do you need to make sure that your vendors have business licenses in the area where the work is going to be done, they have to have one in their principal office and the site of the community. They need to possibly have a contractor's license depending on the scope. Your vendors need to be bonded and insured to make sure they have property damage liability and of course workers' compensation. Also be careful about using the handyman. I know a lot of our boards like to utilize handyman, and they can be very handy, but you have to also keep in mind that a handyman can only be utilized in the state of Nevada for $1,000 or less, and that $1,000 includes labor and materials. So if you have a project that is $1,001, you cannot use a handyman, nor can you take a project that is $10,000 and have them split it out and bill you in 10 separate bills for $1,000. That's considered a violation of law. I also recommend that you check with a contractors board for the status of the required licenses. Sometimes things change, and it's important that before a large project gets started that you check the status of the licenses immediately before the project starts, just in case somebody fell out of favor with the contractors board. I do recommend that you call references. There's nothing wrong with calling references. Current references, past references. I prefer to call past references because people in the past are probably going to be a little bit more forthcoming with information versus somebody that's currently working on a project. Also, it's very important to notice that if you are soliciting bids and or awarding projects to trade partners in which you have a relationship, that it is disclosed. Directors must disclose any kind of relationship or conflict of interest with a trade partner. Reduction of liability in your community. In addition to listening to industry experts, it's very important that the board and members in your community take the effort to report things that they see, walk the community on a regular basis, and look for common hazards. It takes a village. You live in the community, you're in the community every day. Don't assume that something that you see has been reported. I'd rather, and we would rather, have you report and have many people report something than not report it at all. So while you're walking through your community, walking your dog, going to get the mail, take time to make sure if there are any kind of tree branches that are hanging low, any kind of loose fencing, any kind of concrete that's lifting, any kind of amenities that could have loose parts or pieces, and make sure that those items are reported to community management so that we can get those cured in a timely fashion. Also, it's very important to remember that your playground equipment should be professionally inspected. We all learn in the state of Nevada how detrimental it is to a community and how costly it can be if you don't inspect it, so they must be professionally inspected. We also want to make sure that the reports and the actions of the board are in the minutes and provide a legal record of what the board has done in order to protect liability, that you're doing routine inspections, that you're following your trade experts. So make sure that anything that's done outside of a meeting is brought to the attention of the community manager so it can be documented in your minutes. Association insurance. Very important. It is mandated by law that you carry insurance. The specific type of insurance that is required is will be listed in the next slide, but it's important that you that you carry all of the insurance that's listed in your governing documents in addition to NRS 116. My recommendation is to, in order to do a risk assessment, is to invite your insurance company to conduct a risk assessment visit. They are more than happy to walk through your community, look for certain things, tripping hazards, potential issues, and they would be happy to work with you to make sure that you guys have a comprehensive risk management program. Of course, you want to follow the business judgment rule and make sure you have detailed questions and specific policy coverage outlined in all of these plans. But I also want to remind you that your community manager is not an insurance expert. Types of insurance policy that you should carry, all associations are required to carry, is property damage, fire and casualty, liability, directors and officers, otherwise known as D&O. It is mandated by NRS, and it also covers your managing agent. Crime and dishonesty, also otherwise known as fidelity, and then workers' compensation. Workers' compensation is very important, especially if you have multiple vendors or if you have volunteers. It is also required by our management agreement. A lot of associations don't understand why, if they don't have employees, why they have to carry a workers' compensation policy. It's a minimal policy, $500–600, and it's a small amount to pay for coverage. If you as a volunteer are out doing a property walk or making an adjustment to the gate and something happens to you, none of the other types of policies are going to cover you. Workers' compensation is the only types of coverage afforded for volunteers if they hurt themselves. So it's very important that all associations carry workers' compensation. Also, if you have a trade partner that unfortunately sometimes their insurance lapses and we don't get notified on time, of course that's going to be the time that the person falls out of the tree. So it's more important to have a workers' compensation policy. Better to be safe than sorry. Now we get to committees. Cindy talked about committees a little bit during the first section, but in my opinion, committees can be one of the most valuable resources a board have. They help to identify who some of the future board members are. They can also help cover the tasks. As you know, being a board member is sometimes like having a second job, full-time, unpaid. So having committee members that can help alleviate some of those tasks is very valuable. And some committees are mandated per the governing documents, such as the Architectural Committee. And we're going to talk about different types of committees here in the next slide. But all committees should have at least a board member as a liaison or a member of the committee. And I highly recommend that you utilize written charters and formal reporting in your board of directors meeting. If you need sample charters, please reach out to your community manager. They'd be happy to provide those. We have many samples here at CAMCO. Types of committees include social and welcome committees, newsletter committees, maintenance and common area committees, landscaping or ARC, finance, and compliance committees. A lot of associations that have frequent hearings like to adopt a compliance committee so that those hearings can be conducted by the committee and it frees the board up to focus on other items. If you're a small association and you don't have enough members to follow all of these committees, you could have just one general committee called the Board Support Committee, but it is a very valuable tool and helps to efficiently run the operations of your association. Cindy talked about it in the beginning about newsletters and communication. The easiest way to prevent problems in your association, personality problems, miscommunication, is to utilize all the tools available to your association. That includes newsletters, websites, e-blasts, apps. There's lots of tools available, especially in this day and age. Communication can bring your neighborhood together. It helps alleviate problems, make sure that everybody's on the same page, especially when there's changes. And it is a way to also build a sense of community and bring people together. We're all getting better with Zoom attendance, and we're learning to do fun things on Zoom. There's painting parties and just, coffee chats or happy hours. They're great tools that you can utilize to bring your community together and communicate with everybody so we're all on the same page. So, what's your job as a board member? To remain informed of the association's business, read the materials that your community manager provides. That's your job. There's nothing more disheartening back in the day when we'd have physical meetings is to have a board come to the meeting and rip open the envelope with this board of directors materials in the envelope. Your job is to be prepared to make decisions at the board of directors meeting. You are not required to be a specialist. You're not an expert. You are required to listen to your experts and follow direction and obtain advice when needed. But the primary job of the board is to be informed, participate in decisions being brought before the board. Active participation. This is the point where we would normally ask questions, but we do have a website set up at education@camconevada.com. If you have any questions regarding the materials, please feel free to email this address. This Board Member 101 training is not all-inclusive. It is meant to be just a general basic overview. I'm sure you'll have questions, and we look forward to hearing from you.